right. Good afternoon. I have had to miss a few days because I've been traveling and it's been raining every day until today. So, time to take a walk in the park and talk about technology. Yeah. So, I just came back from a startup conference yesterday. Well, actually, I'm still in the place where I am right now, but the conference is done, and it was interesting to meet a bunch of new people and talk about new ideas and go over some old ones and get some feedback and different perspectives and things like that. One of the things that we were talking about was sort of getting into the idea of how technology is going to sort of, I guess, help us with a lot of different aspects. And obviously we talked about different ways that AI is changing things and how it's being applied and all that. And I want to actually go and expand on some of the ideas that we talked about previously here, specifically in the area of using AI to sort of like get better understanding of relationships, right? So actually, I think it was in the last video that we talked about using AI as a tool for peacemaking, right? Where this is like, the concept there was to create AI agents that are basically acting as sort of doppelgangers, or like clones of different people that you're trying to have maybe some conversations or talks or negotiations about something. And I think we can even go a lot further than that still. So previously we were just talking about the ways that the relationships are sort of going together, but you can take this sort of these relationships and go beyond sort of the human to human sort of relationships that are the communications and the conversations, and also start to take a look at other areas that affect the decision making and the way that people think. So this includes economic relationships, right? So where money is going, where it is flowing, and we can look at environmental relationships, and this also ties in directly with resources, and you can already see a three-way triangle there between economics, resources, and the environment. We can talk about shipping and logistics relationships, we can talk about communication relationships, and we can talk about ideological relationships, which obviously it very much affects the way that people think, act, and interact with each other. And I think where I'm going with this is that ultimately these sort of like webs of connections, right? People have these in their head, right? Inside of your brain, you do kind of have like something that's similar to like a neural network in a sense, right? That's literally why it's called neural network. And it is making sort of different connections, associating different topics. But you're never going to probably get it to the point where you could with a synthetic version of this, where it really has like every single known quantifiable data point about these different areas of concern, right? So how do you go about building this, right? So number one, you need data collection, right? So you have to source all of the data, and obviously a lot of that data is constantly in motion, right? Just like if you're looking at a stock price, or an exchange rate price, right? As people are interacting with the markets, those prices are constantly in flux, right? And you can say the same thing for just about anything else, right? Even figures like population numbers, those actually, if you could like monitor that in real time, where you have sort of births and deaths sort of changing that number, that's always in flux, right? Every minute of every day. Now, that might not be practical to try and have real-time data for all of these different areas. So you might want to start snapshotting sort of that data. And it also might not be best to just snapshot any particular moment in time, as a single point. Probably to get better insights, and depending on the scenario, of course, you'll want to take a series of a series of snapshots and then calculate like, mean, median type of averages in terms of, trying to get a number that is going to be useful inside of this network of relationships, right? So let's look at some kind of like practical examples of this, right? So let's say that you want to try and figure out if you should invest in a specific company, right? So you're doing like your due diligence research, and you say, like, okay, yeah, should I invest $1 million in company XYZ or something, right? So you could look at obviously their information, like, if it's a company that discloses things like quarterly earnings, if they have like reports that are coming out, you can do that. You can scrape the internet for customer reviews. You can see like what are people saying about them, what are people talking about them on social media. You can take a look at their website, look at their prices. Ideally, if you could look at their prices over time, that would be good. You could look at, let's say if that company has like physical locations that requires customers, you could look at the traffic around the shops that they have still. Now you could actually probably do something pretty interesting with this with like Google Maps, and you can see like the traffic. Is it always busy around this area or something, right? If you really wanted to go all out, you potentially could even use the information from like public cameras, right? So let's say if you had like some public cameras, and there's a bunch of these actually, like just like public webcams, and if you could see like get a video stream that's near like some of their locations, and actually start to count these, and obviously you could use AI for analysis there, right? Yeah, so I think the idea is like it should be creative and comprehensive, and then from there you have to sort of be able to rank order this data, right? In terms of like what is the most useful data, what is the most relevant data, what data is less so, right? And that in and of itself, again, could be tricky, but that's an area where sort of like an AI analysis agent could definitely help out that process still. So ultimately, again, you're trying to get the same sort of result as we talked about before, where you have some sort of a definitive decision at the end of the process, right? It gives you a report and says not only like what you should actually do in terms of a decision, but it also will say why why and how it came to this conclusion, right? And that's again quite important. Now there's two ways to go about that. One of them is obviously to just have the agent tell you why, and this is sort of akin to reasoning models, for example. Like it'll go through its reasoning steps, and if you can look through the reasoning steps and understand that okay, yeah, this is sort of like its thought process on how it came to this conclusion, right? But then there's also the more sort of like technical, deeper way where you're trying to use like explainable AI, right? And that's like where inherent in the model itself, it's meant to sort of explain why it made that decision, in terms of like the actual weights and biases inside of the model still. Much more difficult, especially for a large language model still. That is kind of I would say that's still an unresolved issue, though there have been claims at this point of people who have said that they've come up with certain methods or sort of processes or new ways of developing models that are able to sort of have less of a black box type of feel to it. But I don't think we're at the point where we can conclusively say that we have something that is definitely doing that on a consistent basis, right? So yeah, I mean, basically these are just like giant data collection and analysis infrastructure projects. And again, you build these things piecemeal, and then over time, as you develop something that's more and more comprehensive, then you should be seeing better, more consistent, more explainable results that you can feel more and more confident on taking action with, right? And this applies to all different kinds of things, right? It can apply to business decision making for a company. It can apply to governments trying to make decisions, or even just individuals, right? And for individuals, companies and governments, obviously they're going to have different requirements in terms of what data and what objectives they have, but also they're going to have different requirements in terms of what they can actually what they're going to actually expect in terms of like an interface, right? So for sort of a average Joe or something, the user interface would need to be quite simple, very straightforward, not too complex, and lean more on the side of basic conversational inputs, let's say, put behind the scenes work, like a lot of behind the scenes work that the user wouldn't see, and then the end results should be easy to understand, and sort of not too complex, not too technical, again hiding all the things. Whereas for businesses and governments, again depending on what the specific application is, they would be expecting a lot more transparency in terms of being able to have access and visibly see sort of like each step in the process and how it happened. And I think that's also an interesting point, is that when you have that transparency and you have an interface that allows for you to have more sort of like fine-grained control, then you also run into a problem where you might tinker too much with it, right? So this is a sort of thing like where you want to strike a balance between what you can see and then how much you want to actually change the configurations there, and then on the flip side of that, sort of like being able to trust the agent to do its job and letting it do its job. And one nice little reference that I've always really appreciated was from there's an episode of the cartoon, or like the short clip version of Black Mirror, where they have this they had an episode that was called Super Intelligent Yogurt or something like that, and basically some guys in a lab invented like artificial super intelligence in the form of yogurt. Why not? It's just for fun, right? So I'm like it's whatever. The point isn't about the yogurt so much, right? But so the super intelligent yogurt went to the government, and it's like, hey, okay, listen, you guys are headed for a catastrophe, but if you do this plan exactly as we have laid out, everything will be fine, right? And what happens, right? So they get the plan, right? And then the humans just couldn't help themselves, right? And they started tinkering with it. And they're like, okay, this is good, but we should change this, and change this. And the artificial super intelligent yogurt is like, no, don't do that. Really, like, just do the plan exactly as we said still. And then the humans are like, yeah, for sure. And then tinker. And sure enough, still catastrophe ensues. And then, super intelligent yogurt ends up taking over the entire world and being kind overlords to the rest of the human race still. But in any case, that's not to say that you should just outright blindly trust AI or anything like that. But humans do have a natural tendency to perhaps overcomplicate, and again, the word tinker really just comes to mind with things that maybe shouldn't. That you should just leave as it is still, right? So I'm gonna leave it there for today, and I guess we'll see you in the next one. I'm not sure when I'll be home. See ya.